Olivier, would you like to comment on Alexander's presentation? I think you differ in the outlook a bit in the mid-term, up to 2020, on not only the factors but also the relative importance of supply factors versus demand and what can be forthcoming in the markets.
Your question is about my own prospect for oil and gas prices?
For supply and demand developments and peak supply versus peak demand. Could you comment on that?
Oh, yes. Well, I took a public position on this point. So I think there is going to be a squeeze of oil between 2015 and 2020. And this is already starting to change the regime of the oil price, as I said in the presentation, from a price driven by the production cost to a price driven by the user value. So as such, I fully subscribe to this analysis showing what is really the very concrete effect of, yes, $200 barrel makes sense. But the one point which is to be remembered, that a stable, let's say, generally speaking, a stable commodity price does not exist. Stable oil price does not exist, and we will go through a strong volatility because once supply and demand, especially in a situation of very low or no spare capacities, are really matching together and there is a 100% utilization of production capacities, every minor change in demand and in supply translate into very wide changing in price. So we will go through probably, most probably, this is my own assumption, high prices, probably above $200, based on an assumption of exchange rate. But we will go through swings, ups and downs, which will make the economic decision even more difficult, even for individuals and families. What will be the best decision to take in front of strongly volatile prices, to switch from oil heating systems to alternative sources? I just want to mention something. Today in France, the market share of oil heating systems in new constructions is 1%.
In new, yes.
New, I say new. So
zero.
I want to also to reply, to this story of peak demand. The long-term evolution of oil demand has already started in the 70s. The first and second oil shocks has already initiated the long-term trend of oil demand. Oil demand is more and more concentrated on high-value usages, such as, of course, air transportation and road transportation. Oil is gradually disappearing from low-value sectors, such as burning a fossil molecule just for heating water at 50 degrees. This, in the long term, doesn't make any sense, and oil is already disappearing from those demand sectors. So, peak demand, it has already started 40 years ago, but oil is more and more concentrated on transportation, where for the foreseeable future there is no substitute except using less. In my view, this is very insufficient to imagine that there will be a positive adaptation of demand which will decline in order to match available supply. I still subscribe to the view that it will be the opposite. Limited supply will be constraining demand, and the effect of constraining demand will be significantly raising price.
Thank you. Alexander, is there anything you would like to comment on?
Probably a couple of things. I mean, I would fully subscribe to that. I think what you showed here with heating oil, basically, is already happening since 2008 in the US in the transportation sector. Yeah, there are mandatory efficiency gains the automotive industry has to achieve. Yeah, they are not necessarily all chosen by the public, by the individual. They're partly mandatory, but what it already leads to is a reduction in demand, what I showed before, by some 700,000 barrels a day. Yeah, and that's exactly already happening. And the lesson learned from 2008, when you've seen Americans driving public transport or sharing cars or buying smaller cars. So exactly this is the way forward. In terms of the development, peak demand, peak supply, I'm a simple economist. For me, demand supply regulates via the price. Yeah. So if we are willing to pay $200, $250, whatever it is, there will be the possibility to produce sufficient oil to fulfill that requirement. Yeah, may it be ultra deep sea water, may it be GTL, may it be CTL, may it be biofuels, whatsoever. It's a simple quotation of price. Of course, what you're saying, it might create some volatility because the system might adapt to certain swings. Yeah, but on the long-term perspective, you know, for me, it's again that's what I mean with peak demand. It's basically that's the price which defines how much you will produce at the very end. Yeah, of course there is some improvement in costs on the very margin of your production, but that's clear. And the last point I want to make, also in relation with the 2 points, is and probably why the IEA was overestimating demand developments for the last years. One critical factor is oil intensity. So how much oil do you use to produce 1,000 barrels per GDP per capita, basically. Yeah, and what you see is that this oil intensity historically is and was much higher in this developed world, in the OECD world, than we already see it in the non-OECD world. So these developing countries like China, India, and so forth, they already have, on a relative basis, a much lower oil intensity in their development path. Yeah, which, if you don't look at that, might actually make you to think that demand is growing much faster than a lot of people might believe, or I would say conservative outlook when you look at supply-demand outlook there.
Thank you. I saw at least 4 questions in the audience. Very concise, please, and also direct your question to who you're asking it.
Thank you kindly. Roger Bentley at Reading University. A couple of quick questions for Oliver. They're all quick, and then a quick comment for Alexander. 2 questions for Oliver is, I have to remember what they are. Oh yes, you've got your development costs of $2 and a bit a barrel. What do you think is the full real production cost of something like Brazilian subsalt, full lifetime production cost of that per barrel? That's one question. Second to you, if you don't mind, you had a nice graph on discovery per year. Looking at the numbers, they look to me like they were 1p proved discovery numbers. Would you care to comment why you did put up the proved rather than the proved and probable, which you know show a very different picture? You're probably very aware of this. So first question was, what's the real cost, we think, of a Brazilian subsalt? Secondly, proved discovery done by proved as opposed to proved and probable. And then, Alexander, if I might comment, we're talking about the IEA. You have that very nice graph of total oil against price, total amount of oil against price going from consumed all the way through to EOR and so on. Just a cautionary comment, the IEA used exactly that sort of graph themselves. You said it came from them originally. That's that formatted graph. In several of their IEA World Energy Outlooks to convince themselves there was plenty of oil, completely forgetting about the decline rates of the fields in those blocks. So when you put up a graph like that, you just have to add that cautionary note that decline in the blocks. Thank you, Kai.
Olivier?
Just a quick comment. That's why I'm saying we're taking this as an example, right? But we're remodeling it exactly because of your input and exactly because of the input that we only would be looking at what is realistic to be produced within the next 30 years and not in total. That's why it looks also so much different than when you look at the original from the IEA. Yeah.
Okay, first element of answer specifically on the Brazilian projects. Based on the fact that it's only starting and that there is limited knowledge on the subject, my own view is that complete development cost doesn't seem to be higher than $15 per barrel, depending on the methodology you use. This, again, I insist in my presentations, the absolute values are underestimated by roughly a factor of 2. Okay? Concerning offshore projects, in Brazil, the value I would use would be around $15 per barrel, but this is only the technical cost, and it does not. Using this kind of estimate does not tell you, or it's hiding the fact that you need a significantly high oil price to make those projects profitable, depending, of course, on the level of upstream taxation. But let's say that very pure estimate, personal estimate, at $15 per barrel technical cost in Brazil, we are closer to 90, an oil price which needs to be around $90 per barrel to make those projects profitable. And second point, did I do something wrong? But I don't think that I do not refer to proved reserves. Mean. It's inside the title of the, at least of one side. This is the mean estimate.
Thank you.
It's not proved.
Let's come back to that afterwards.
Hello, I'm Cedric Ringenbach. I'm the director of the Shift project. And I have one question specifically for Michael Cerveny. Did you have the opportunity to have discussions with the bankers or the people who invest in the real economy, for example, in projects of refurbishing flats or houses, and try to give them the idea that they should take as when they try to calculate the return on investment, they need to make hypotheses on the price of energy in the future, and they are trying to give an answer to somebody who is asking for a mortgage. And these people will say yes or no to somebody who asks for a credit. According to this hypothesis of price of energy in the future, usually they say the price will be constant, which is a bad hypothesis. Are you having conversation with them to try to convince them that in the calculus of ROI they should make hypothesis of, I don't know, 3% per year, in order for them to change the way they say yes or not to credits in projects like refurbishment or things like that? Are you talking with bankers or people who finance this kind of project?
Michael?
Well, I mean, this example that I showed here refers mostly to single-family houses, and I honestly believe that most families do not represent the homo economicus, really, as we have learned it at the University of Economics. They decide emotionally, they decide, I don't know, for whatever reason, they decide on what they do this year, or they insulate or renovate their house or not, or which kind of heating system they buy. And I think my intention is a little bit going into the direction of Robert Hirsch. Time is important. Between 2009 and 2011, I think 15 or even 20,000 new oil heating systems were sold in Austria because people thought, aha, it's cheap again. These oil heating systems will be there till 2030 and beyond. Probably people will throw it out before, but this was stranded investment probably. And I think what I really would like politics, media, and everybody to tell people, times are changing, don't have wrong anticipation of what is going on in the future. Understanding peak oil, I don't want everybody to understand peak oil, but at least I want people to understand the future will not be an extension of the past concerning energy prices. So there will be a lot of change, and every year you are waiting is a lost year. Because when the time is coming, we will not have enough installers, enough boilers, not enough stoves, nothing. It will take we need a lot of time for this transition, and we should better start now.
Thank you. One concise question here, one concise there, and then unfortunately we have to go to lunch because we're already 15 minutes almost into eating time.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexander Rech from Global Change Research Center. What I'm missing in the future price development and supply and demand is the global debt. It means that still the global debt is rising about 3 times faster than real GDP. So what would be the effect of global debt crash, something similar which happened after Lehman collapse? So it's not simply possible to debt grow much faster than real GDP. So why do you think that price inflation should dominate? So it's the question for Alex and Olivier.
Olivier, would you like to comment? Or Alexander?
I guess you have to ask our friends at the G8 what they think about that. I'm not too much of an expert to tell you, but look, I mean, this is a question of how you would perceive global economic development at the very end. Debt you're making on your country, you're making on yourself. Yeah, if Austria goes out there and loans money, it's basically loaning it from you. Yeah. So the question is how much loan you can get out there. I think the bigger question is, in terms of the debt versus GDP ratio question, is how much trust can the financial system create again? Yeah, to provide such loans or such credit in relation to the GDP. Again, what the future plan is, you have to ask our friends in the G8 or in the European Union, the US, whatsoever. But I think the critical question really is, besides looking at numbers, again, creating the trust that banks and financial institutions are willing to loan money again. Yeah. And this is the real question we have to face. That's what this trust to reestablish what they are trying to work on.
Thank you. Final question.
Okay, Ewan Mearns, a very short question for Michael. I'm fortunate enough to have a cottage where I fitted a couple of wood burners. I love chopping up wood. I love watching it burn. Is there any energy advantage of converting just natural wood into wood pellets? Why make wood pellets when you can burn wood?
We will have Christian Rackers speaking this afternoon. He is president of the Austrian and of the European Pellet Association. His answer will be no problem, but he will give the answer in a more detailed way than I.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Lunch is being served, and we'll be back in 45-50 minutes over here. Thank you.